The CSC is investigating LSU, but is it all much ado about nothing? I'll tell you what I know. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. By now, you probably know The Athletic reported via Public Information Records release an email from the CSC, that's the Collegiate Sports Commission. That's the independent third party that oversees and approves NIL deals. Via Public Information's request, The Athletic obtained an email from the CSC to LSU indicating that they are investigating or beginning an investigation to an LSU athlete's NIL deal. When this news broke on Friday, candidly, Friday night, I was the Grand Marshal of the KKDL Mardi Gras Ball in Baton Rouge. So all of this transpired while I was the Grand Marshal of a Mardi Gras Ball. So I guess maybe the benefit of that is it gave me some time to make some calls and try to find out what I could specifically about this story. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. And I think what you're going to find is that while the Athletic report is fair, the way that they presented it was probably a bit of engagement farming, and that's not fair. And certainly, I would say that's not ethical. But let me first start with what we know. And look, the Athletic's behind a paywall. I know a lot of people won't have the subscription for the Athletic. But just as one quick catch up, if you're not familiar with the CSC, remember, every NIL deal, this is the important part to note, every NIL deal over $600 has to be reported to the CSC, the Collegiate Sports Commission. The CSC then either gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So you might remember a few weeks back, the CSC issued an initial report of the number of deals that had come through, what percentage was approved, what percentage wasn't approved, at what dollar amount. I'm not looking at it directly, my apologies, but it was something along the lines of like 80% had been approved. There's an overwhelming majority of them that had been approved, right? And so that's the independent third party, Deloitte, that oversees the CSC to determine if these deals are of fair market value, is basically the role the CSC plays. So the Athletic issues a report, and it's the first publicly known investigation, as they put, into a big name program, LSU. Now, the email was obtained Friday by the Athletic, and it was a January the 15th email. In the email, CSC's head of investigations, Katie Medeiros, wrote to Verge Osbury. I'll read this line. I'm quoting, "The College Sports Commission is investigating whether a member of one of your institution's sports teams failed to report one or more third-party name, image, and likeness deals in accordance with applicable rules." Again, I think what's important to know there, member, singular, one athlete, one student athlete, failed to report deal or deals. So that's what they're accusing or investigating. This is not what I think many immediately jumped to the conclusion. And the part that maybe I didn't like is while the photo associated with the article on The Athletic is just fans holding up an LSU sign, the social media post included the LSU football helmet. That was disingenuous, because if you're looking at that post and you see the LSU football helmet associated, the immediate reaction is to think this is football related. And as I've been told through sources familiar with this investigation, it is not a football player being investigated. And again, it is as that email said, singular athlete, not in football. So I think everybody's minds immediately devolved to, man, LSU just signed this #1 transfer portal class. And how do they do it? How do they get the money? It's thing we talked about plenty here on the show. And very clearly, what is clear here is that it's not wide ranging, what's being discussed right here, and it's not a football athlete as well. In the piece, Zach Greenwell, who's LSU's deputy AD for external affairs, released a statement. I will tell you candidly that we at LouisianaSports.net got the same statement. It reads, we have been in regular communication with the CSC since the organization's formation and appreciate their ongoing collaboration and guidance. We anticipate this specific inquiry will be resolved shortly. We will not comment further on regulatory matters. And again, source confirms to me that that this is not a football athlete, and even more so, and this is another thing that I did include in a tweet, and that in the Athletics article, the CSC spokesperson also said to the Athletic, quote, as previously indicated, the CSC has reached out to several schools to inform them of investigations into unreported NIL deals. We will not comment further on this time, at this time. So, again, I think what you have here is a few things, and there's a little more information that I want to share that I was able to get in this situation. But I think the most important thing to know is, if you were thinking, man, football's recent class, this recent portal class, how do they pay for it? Is that the CSC investigating? There was the leaked contract to Brendan Sorsby that sort of got a lot of headlines. There was the DeMond Williams situation, which became very public. This has nothing to do with any of that. The other thing I'll tell you that I don't love about the way the Athletic did this, there were, as I was able to find out, more than a dozen schools that received these inquiries. And as best I can piece it together here, you're looking at a situation where you had that report that the CSC issued a few weeks ago. And as a result of that report, they probably compiled this list of questions or for investigations and sent them out sort of in one sort of bulk investigation. LSU was probably the most prominent name school. I'm guessing here, by the way, that's a guess. I don't know this, but I think it's why the Athletic, which could have gotten any of these via public records request, chose to center on LSU. Now, the other thing that I don't like is that aside from the comment from Zach Greenwell, I was told that the Athletic, they got the inquiry, they emailed Sports Information at LSU, but didn't wait for a response from Sports Information at LSU, which would have, I believe, issued the same statement to the Athletic that they issued to me, or that Zach Greenwell issued, or anything else to suggest that it wasn't football. So why would you post a picture of a football helmet or Lane Kiffin? That's the part that feels a little disingenuous. Not a little, a lot disingenuous to me about how this all transpired. There's a few other things that I've been able to decipher throughout this that I'll share with you, a few other little tidbits. So let me step aside real quickly so I stay on time and knock out all the elements I need to. And I'll give you a few more tidbits that you'll need to know about this situation. That's next. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, whether you're riding the underdog, or you're building one last same-game parlay. This is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show is also brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person, or you can connect online. You can upload your documents, you can go about your day and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. That's if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And finally, we're brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. You know, when we think about how LSU has come together, it was certainly a disappointing end to the football season that had a lot of expectation. But what about Lane Kiffin coming into Baton Rouge, assembling his staff and doing the job he did, building this transfer portal class? Absolutely incredible, which has injected life into this program and a lot of optimism and expectation for the 2026 season and beyond. You know, these things remind us what it really takes to raise the bar. The extra work off and on the court, on the field, dialing in every detail, giving it the extra fire, that grit, that I never quit. Mazda puts the same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it looks like to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Okay, I want to go through a few more tidbits of info that may be helpful in this situation. As it looks like LSU is working with the CSC to resolve this situation. And as I understand it, this could be resolved this weekend or maybe by Monday. So this is not something that's going to linger. And it feels like this is probably a big zero. You have multiple schools that were reached out to. It's not football, and it feels like we're talking about one athlete in a not in football who is maybe accused of failing to report deals that were over $600. Now, I think the other thing that it's important to know is LSU is not being investigated as a department. This is at least one athlete that's being reviewed for non-deal reporting. Again, so that's not the department. It's one athlete, at least one athlete for non-deal reporting. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean that the student athlete did or did not do a deal without reporting. They're just being investigated. And at least one conversation that I had Saturday morning, there's a belief that maybe this was just inadvertent non-disclosure because the deal might have fallen below the threshold of $600. They thought it might have fallen below the threshold of $600. So maybe this isn't this completely nefarious thing where someone was signing a giant deal, which I think is where a lot of the thought with this circumstance might lead people to generally fall down that path. I think it is also important to note that multiple sources at LSU have informed me, and I don't think this is any surprise, Zach Greenwell said it in that statement, that LSU has complied fully. They do expect resolution soon. And also, this is the other really interesting part. And in that statement from Zach Greenwell, part of what he said was, and I'm reading this quote here, "We have been in regular communication with the CSC since the organization's formation and appreciate their ongoing collaboration." So I think it's important to know that LSU and every school, I'm sure, has been in regular communication with the CSC. While this is something that maybe you and I and the general public and sports fans may not be plugged into on a day-to-day basis because it's something happening away from the court, the field, the diamond, all that stuff. This is something that's a very regular part of athletic administration now in this rev share era. So I think that LSU being in communication with the CSC and being transparent probably only serves them well in this situation. And again, you're talking about at least a dozen schools that received inquiries from the CSC. I think there were many that received them before LSU did, as best I could tell. LSU just kind of became the one that was the center of the report through the public records request. And I think what we're going to see is that if the Athletic or other news sources do get a list from the CSC or they go through the public records request component of this, they'll find you're going to see it's a lot of sports, a lot of schools across the country in a lot of different sports. And I think some of them probably will involve football. However, LSU's did not involve football. And that's probably the thing that's going to be quite disappointing to a lot of fans of other schools that might have found this, that were thinking this was a gotcha moment based on the transfer portal class that Lane Kiffin signed. I think this was a combination of, yes, there is fact. And if you read through the Athletic piece, they do have a lot of that fact in there, that it's a single athlete, it's potential non-reporting. There were multiple schools that received these inquiries, but for them not to get the statement from LSU that it's not football, and also to have included a football helmet and intimated that Lane Kiffin or football was involved, I think that misses the mark of what you'd like to see from a credible news outlet. So that's the unfortunate part. I think this was sort of a gotcha moment many people thought was coming, or many people thought this was a gotcha moment. And I just, based on all the information I've been able to gather, it doesn't feel like that. This feels pretty insignificant. I think, I think there are, I'm going to editorialize here. So most of what I've told you right now is reporting stuff that I've got. Let me editorialize here for a second if I can. So I'm just so that I've told you this often, so that I can differentiate when I'm giving you an opinion and when I'm reporting to you facts. What I've said to this point, I am confidently reporting to you that I believe it's one student athlete from LSU. It was not disclosed to me what sport, but not football. LSU has been in compliance. They've been in communication with the CSC. Read the statement from Zach Greenwell at LSU. I've gone through the athletic report. I feel like everything now we've reported, I've been able to report accurately. Now I'll give you an opinion. I think this is probably one of those things where this feels like the investigation will be pretty straightforward, and you're probably looking at a situation where you had a miscommunication where either items, cash, whatever were traded, maybe someone thought was worth less than $600 in value and didn't need to be reported. I think, be it the agent at LSU, not the agent at LSU, excuse me, like the student athlete's agent, who in many of these instances work with compliance to go through reporting these deals, that like an agent, because remember, an agent can still broker a deal. Every deal doesn't. We've talked plenty here about NILSU Max, where LSU can broker the deals through their multimedia rights partner. It doesn't always have to be that way. A student athlete has an agent can go broker a deal, right, for their client. Well, in the event that happens, they then have to report that to LSU so LSU can submit it to the CSC. So, I mean, this could be a situation like that where you're still in the relative infancy of this era. And sometimes I think things are going to fall through the cracks. So this feels like a nothing. Based on everything I've been able to gather, it feels relative to what a lot of people thought the moment you first saw that news break. This feels like a relative nothing. And based on the best information I've gotten, I think this is going to be, again, that initial email was sent to Verge 16 days ago. So from the time LSU responded, which they have, and they've been cooperating with the CSC, and as I'm to understand, this could be resolved by this weekend or maybe Monday. This doesn't feel like it's going to linger. It feels kind of like a big zero, but I understand why people are interested in it in this era as we learn more. And as I learn more, I'll certainly share it with you. But the thing, I think if you're an LSU fan, which you can exhale, is knowing that this isn't a football matter. It's not a wide sweeping thing. It appears to be maybe one student athlete in another sport that very likely just had a deal that they failed to report, then their agent, whoever it might have been, because they thought maybe it was less than $600 and maybe there was some miscommunication. So if anything further develops, we'll share it with you right here on Locked on LSU. So in the meantime, please do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review, let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.